Hello everyone, my name is Paul at Legisway, and I'll just be giving you a brief presentation, notes before we start today's webinar. So first of all, thank you all for joining us. We have a great session lined up for you today. Before we get started, just a few general housekeeping points to cover. First and foremost, if you have any questions, please use the online question tool you should see there to post any questions that you have, and we will share them with our speakers. Second, if you experience any technical difficulties today, please use the same question tool, and a member of our admin team will be on hand to support you. And finally, just to note, this session is being recorded. We'll be sharing the copy of the recording with you via email in the coming days, and it will also be available on our on-demand platform. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to our speakers to get us started. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much, Paul. Good morning again, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this very interesting webinar. I'm delighted to welcome Alan this morning with us. Alan, thank you so much for joining. We'll discuss a very important topic. We've been discussing this with Alan for quite some time now, about how to help the legal function getting to an optimization point through maturity assessment. So what are the main questions you need to ask yourself to reach a better maturity, how to actually move forward with the organization of your data in your organization. Alan, maybe a few words to introduce you.
Thank you very much, Grégoire, and good morning, good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be speaking to you about a very important topic, maturity assessment. And I'm speaking to many law departments every week, and it's always a very hot topic. How do I compare myself versus my peers? And of course, the very other hot topic is Gen AI and technology, legal technology. That's why it's great to be doing this webinar with Wolters Kluwer. And so in 2 seconds, on my side, so I've been in-house for 20 years before setting up this consulting business 3.5 years ago with Dentons, and we'll give you a few words about Dentons in a few moments. And then, so what keeps myself busy every week is to help law departments optimize their legal operating model, and that's very much what we will be discussing today with Grégoire.
Thank you very much, Alan. Good to have you. Really good to have you with us. So we've been working with Alan for quite some time now, and looking forward to more collaboration. I'm the director for global business enablement and product management at Wolters Kluwer Legal Software. We're working on, and maybe just a few words on Wolters Kluwer, but we're working on solutions for in-house legal teams. I'll give a very short introduction. A word also on the agenda, what you can expect to get from us today, and we'll try to make this as practical, pragmatic, tangible as we can. We will be talking about structuring your data, really. So how to move from cost center to business partner. Questions been around for a while now for legal functions. And what are the main pitfalls of traditional sourcing models? We'll discuss this with Alan. How to overcome budget constraints, lack of expertise. We'll discuss a bit AI because we have to. It's a topic we can't dodge anymore. And mostly, and this is also something we want to introduce you, is how to assess your digital maturity and what does it mean? What are really the main questions you need to ask yourself? We are releasing an assessment tool that will be available in a few weeks. You'll get notified about that. So we're teasing a bit what's happening and what we're really trying to achieve here. Free tool really to help you get and assess yourself, your maturity. A word on Wolters Kluwer, a very large company. You may know us for many different activities, probably publishing, historically in our legal and regulatory division. 5 main divisions in Wolters Kluwer: corporate performance, ESG, financial, corporate compliance, tax and accounting, health. We are part of legal and regulatory, more specifically a business unit called Legal Software, in which we are developing solutions for legal professionals law firms and in-house teams. This is what I'm dedicating myself to for quite some time. A word on your side, Alan, if you want to introduce your activities for largest law firm in the world, right?
Thank you very much, Grégoire. So Dentons, is one of the largest law firms of the world. You can see we have many offices in most of the countries of the world, and that's resonating with what we see that law department needs is to have a partner that can support them, wherever they have an activity. So it's more than 12,500 professionals, more than 100 offices, and we are a full service firm. So we can answer all the issues you may have, and we also have, maybe you've heard about it, Dentons Global Advisory, which is helping a big organization contribute to the debate when you have big new regulation coming up, like with AI, the AI Act. So we are quite active in that space. So that's for Dentons. Back to you, Grégoire.
Excellent. A few words as an introduction about perception of legal technology. A very important aspect here is to understand that we've been really, legal professionals have had to accelerate their maturity in legal technology for many different reasons. Obviously, COVID was one of these reasons. Long time, everyone has had to look for force majeure clauses for quite some time. Some noise in the back. Sorry. So an important aspect here is that traditionally everyone had to assess their maturity based on the type of legal management, the task that they wanted to achieve, and the level of digitization that we've had. So aligning both topics. So this gets you that kind of maturity curve to access and to find the right solutions in a specific context. Normal position has been around rather low here from centralized database, share files and folders. Obviously, been moving forward, especially with many different contexts that actually had to push everyone towards more digitization of their practice. This actually had two significant impacts. The first one is it had to change the paradigm of how people approach technology, not proposing anymore just the kind of task they need to achieve from a legal standpoint and the kind of technology, but actually trying to define how much time and how much productivity and efficiency they were getting out of this solution, and how much time and money they were saving along the way. The second impact, also important, is that it took everyone much closer to far more advanced technologies on this scale, including AI. Everyone again had to answer the question: do I have force majeure clauses in my contract during COVID period, or how international sanctions are impacting my agreements, my contract? How is the labor index expiration impacting my 20 years of contracting in my organization? So all of this, obviously, making the organization, making the approach of technology a bit more complex. But on top of that, the fact that the market is complex. Being editors ourselves, it is extremely complex. For anyone who doesn't understand, who has really limited knowledge of what the market landscape looks like from a legal tech perspective, it is difficult to navigate, to understand what exactly you need, and lawyers need right now a lot more simplicity. If we look at data, so from data, how do we get from data to insight? Because again, we're providing containers. We're not providing your content. We're here to help you structure your content, but there's only so much an editor can do with your data. Even with all of the magic that a generative AI can provide today, there's only so much we can do, and because this is also based on a very simple principle, which is garbage in, garbage out. So how do we structure data? And everyone has to understand, how do we get from the scattered information, scattered raw data that we have in here, like what we have on the screen right now, to information. So first of all, we need to organize, we need to structure, we need to label things, so it starts making sense. Then you get from information to knowledge. You start connecting the dots between all the different types of informations, and this is how you start building insight. Actually, trying to identify key information in your database, which is how you get to automation. Actually, how to create and to build and to code a path from one point to another. AI is actually to have a tool which will figure out by itself how to get from one point to the other. So that's really a bit of the basics of what we have around here, and how do we get from raw data to smart insight. Then there's the context that you are all experiencing, increasing workloads, and this is based on our Future Ready Lawyer survey. Increasing workloads for legal departments are making this your life a lot more complicated. This has been around for a long time, not talking about even decreasing budget. So that's the constant challenge of doing more with less, always very challenging. And also based on a statement that we had, which is that 92% of companies say that they are willing to change the way their legal function is operating internally. Emergence of legal operations functions internally as well, very important topic. Do you want to comment on that, Alan?
I think budget is spot on, and we will dig into that aspect. And my feeling is, and I've been in the trenches for 20 years, so I've lived and suffered firsthand of this. It's you corner yourself as a function because you feel it's a privilege to be working for business people, and I think so that's that's all about mindset. You should be proud and look at yourself individually and collectively as a fantastic function that can drive a lot of value. So it starts with a mindset, and when you speak to business people, you are at par with those guys. You can drive as much value for their business and people in sales, in procurement. So maybe one word, yes, on mindset. First tip of this call: be proud, and you are contributing a lot of value.
Thank you, Alan. Indeed, and if we look at over numbers, it's also in terms of expectations for legal departments. What we've seen, and that's really the list of the top challenges for legal departments. The first one is they're expecting in the next 3 years greater use of technology to improve productivity. They're also expecting greater insourcing of legal work, and they're expecting more self-service by customers. This is also interesting because there is also the level of preparedness of legal departments that we see on the right side, which is also a comparison between 2021 numbers and 2022, how much they understand the benefit of technology for their department, which went from 27 to 37%, and also having a staff capable of leveraging technology, which went from 30% to 35%. Same thing for understanding technology solutions available. So all of this is progressively evolving to get to more maturity, but we have actually growing and very important challenges. We didn't even have here all the challenges around AI, which is constantly growing. The other thing is that we wanted to illustrate is that we understand very well that the in-house team is at the center of many different influence areas in the organization, supporting also the fact that it is an internal business partner. Obviously, it's a direct link to the executive team. Obviously, interacting with so many other businesses and so many other branches of the business: procurement, business, sales, finance, IT, cybersecurity, and the in-house team itself is also structured around many different populations. Sometimes compliance is part of it, sometimes it's out. Data protection may be in as well. There's close relationship with these people. Contract management sometimes is a separate branch of the organization, depending on the size of your company. So many different parts of the organization here as well. And then you have the interactions with external influencers, law firms, alternative legal service providers, legal contractors, secondment that you may have also in your organization. So if we want to put it in a very simple words, what we could say here is that if we were to oppose the value of the legal work that is being performed and the volume, it would mean that if we have low volume and low value, to put it very simply, what we have here is the do-it-yourself area, to have maximum automation, to delegate that kind of work. That's typically what legal departments just don't want to do, and for very obvious and very good reasons. We want to make sure that the business has enough autonomy to do it by itself. Typically, that's probably the most common use case that we have when we talk with people about our solution Legisway, which is about, hey, I have requests every single day about getting the most updated version of the NDA template for the organization, because people tend to use an outdated version. They found it who knows where in shared folders or in emails, never using the same one. So we're getting constant requests about this. How do we organize a consistent flow to make sure that they automate things? The other part is low value but high volume. This is typically where we have outsourcing, managed legal services, alternative legal service providers, and making sure we can externalize a lot of this work and housekeeping. Then we have very high volume, very high value. This is typically the area where we have the internal expertise, and it's a growing area based also on the numbers that we were showing before. We have a lot more of insourcing trend for legal department. And then we have very high value, very low volume. This is typically law firm work. This is also where we want to externalize. Then what do we have in the middle? In the middle, we have many different things. We have our processes, we have our people, and we have our technology stack. And we want to combine all this so we can connect with the different parts of the organization. So again, putting it in a very, very simple way. If we deep dive then in the real challenge that we have, and back to you, Alan, around these challenges, how law departments struggle with data, which is really what we mostly hear when we discuss with legal departments.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Grégoire. So to build on the great slide that Grégoire just shared, it's all about data. And when we speak about maturity, it starts with the data. Do you have data? And just one simple question: how many hours do you individually or your team, if you have a team, spend on low value work? And how do you define low value work? It's two simple questions. And when we speak to different organizations every week, with Grégoire, I mean, we have not heard one instance where we had a response. It's just, oh yeah, I can tell you how many contracts, and I just look at the contract lifecycle management that have been putting in place. But no one really has data. And here, again, going back to the mindset standpoint, it's not being right or wrong. It's just to acknowledge where you stand today and be honest. If you know your budget, but you don't know, by the hours, what you spend on low value versus high value work, you don't have data. And that's fine. And that's why then we can help you. Because that's the second point, which is, and that's based on this Harvard Law, study of 2022. So the respondent said 83, I spent too much time on low value work. And this is one of the outcomes of the insourcing phenomenon, which happens, after 2008. You had the financial crisis. For the first time, at least that's my experience, I was working for, international organization, American companies, and we saw that we were part of the transformation journey. So we had to make some effort and to reduce our budget year on year. And then, so one strategy, which is an easy one, okay, I will stop spending with law firms, very expensive, and I will start hiring lawyers in-house. And then you have the famous book of, Heinemann, the former GC of General Electric, the in-house counsel revolution. And he says, I will hire the best lawyers in-house, and then I will grow my resources in-house. And that's what happened after 2008. But then the drawback is then you have the business people who says, that's great, now I've got someone who can do what I don't like to do, which is I see a contract, this is legal stuff, and I just throw it on the desk of the lawyers. And this goes back to my earlier point, which is don't see yourself as under a business people. You should see yourself at par with the business people. Say, no, I can, bring you low to bring value to your business. And we co-own. The concept of co-ownability, and I will come back to that point, is very important, so that then you don't end up being cornered and spending your time on stuff that business people don't want to do. So that's the 83%. And then the last number is the understanding of technology. And one of the key messages of our presentation with Grégoire is legal technology is great. That's why, what Legisway is doing is fantastic. But it is only a means to an end. And that's why, you need to go back and know where you are, what data do you have, how is your legal operating model organized? Because you see all those technology out there and it can be really confusing. And now on top, you have GenAI. And when I speak to people, it's very difficult to understand what GenAI and AI is. I spend like 200 hours to learn because we're all back to school. And here again, that's fine. But, don't pretend, oh yeah, I know because I need to know everything. I'm the lawyer in the room. Be self-aware and say, okay, that's great. There is a new tool, but I need to understand, what this tool is and what it can do for me. And GenAI, and that's my last comment on this slide, makes data even more critical, because if you don't have the right data, you will not be able to take advantage of GenAI tool. And I am testing at the moment many tools, and I know Grégoire and Legisway with Della, you're also looking at how to best leverage GenAI for the pleasure of our dear consumers. So we can move to the next slide. Yes, sorry.
Yeah, there's a lot of humility in approaching technology. Also because the first, and I agree with you, Alan, the most important aspect is making sure that we understand why we are looking at technology. And and this is what, I don't want to spoil what you're about to introduce here, but there's really a sense of a cycle and progression when you start covering the different topics that you have in your project. And the first thing is not looking at technology first and trying to figure out how does this match with your organization, but pretty much the other way around.
Yeah, and so that's great. That's why for me, what Grégoire is showing is amazing, because he's not trying to push a product. He's trying to really understand where you are coming from and address your real needs. And so when we go to the needs, and Grégoire, you said it before, the magic word, connecting the dots. Because our observation is, we are living in a world where the fragmentation is increasing. And actually, it should be the other way around. We see lawyers on one corner, we see business people on another corner, we see legal technology companies on another corner, and now you have like the legal ops. And there is no real dialogue and exchange between those different components. And you need all those components, so the business, the lawyers, the technologists, the operational excellent expert around the table to find solutions and to understand what the problems are. Because when we speak to different organizations, we see too often the legal community trying to buy a tool for the lawyers. And what you should be doing actually is to speak to your business counterpart, because a tool very often will be used by the legal function, but also by the business people. Think about, purchase team. Think about sales team. And this is, the process data examples. This is what we mean. As lawyers, you should know what are the standard operating procedure of your business, and you should engage into a dialogue with them to think, okay, how should the legal and compliance function be involved in that process? Concrete example, I'm working with a client at the moment in the consumer goods industry, and they have what they call an ID to market process. So you have the innovation team, they have an idea, and then at the back end, they will put a product on the market. So this ID to market process, Then they discussed, okay, how should the legal community be involved? And then they made some stage gates where, you know, if at the starting of the project you have some super great ideas, but it's super confidential, you should make sure that the employees are trained on confidentiality. If you call upon some third parties, they should have an NDA. And then down the road, if you have an innovation that can be patented, then you have the freedom to operate process. So all this, you see in this example, the legal function spoke to the innovation team, marketing team, so that then they agree and co-design the process together. So that's about process data. So now let's go back to the people data. So what do we mean by that? So here, you know, as you know, Gregor was saying in the introduction slide, it's all about sourcing. So the key question for you is, what do you want to have in-house and what do you want to have outside? And this is, you know, the volume mix. And that will be then driving your legal operating model. So imagine you're a global business, you have, you know, entities in 20 different countries. So do you want to create a center of expertise in a hub somewhere in Paris, in London, or in Zurich, where I'm speaking from? And then you will have, you know, in countries a generalist. So how do you organize that? And then going back to the point around AI, this is a revolution. So how do you upskill your team to make sure that your team will be ready to embrace this new technology? And again, it's all, you know, about learning. So that's for the people data. Then when I look at legal data, this is also very important, and maybe that's something which is overlooked. So a concrete example in the area of contracts. So you take a contract, and then you will basically take each, like what AI is doing, you know, you will tokenize your contract. You take the indemnity provision, and then you have like 5 components, you know, liability cap, exclusion of liability, carve-outs. And then for each component, you take them and you say, okay, what is the risk for each one of those components I'm ready to take? And then how do I structure those data? And I do risk mapping with, you know, an approval system. And this is what we mean by legal data and structuring legal data. And this is what you need to do to be, you know, ready for embracing AI. The last one, and I know I spent a bit of time on this slide, but that's very important to understand what we mean by data. So technology data is, you know, back to what Grégoire was explaining. So what is your tech stack? And again, think broad. It's not only legal technology, it's a great product of Legisway, but it's also, you know, connecting this great product with the rest of your technology environment. And when you do a tech project, you know, what is very important is to make sure that you have your chief information officer with you, part of the journey. So that's what I wanted to share on this slide. So we can move to the next one. Yeah, so complication. So then let's say, okay, you understand data, you start, you know, collecting data, structuring data, but then we know the reaction, because that's something which is new. Like, you know, we are doing many projects with different clients, and it's very interesting. It's like a psychological journey. So at the beginning, you know, we see like a team of 25 or 50 people. Some, they are very curious, they understand, and they embrace the project very fast. But some others, they are more reluctant. They don't really know, and why do we need data? You know, some chief legal officer may think, well, if I start being fully transparent about my legal operating model, does that mean that the business will put more pressure on me, on my budget? That may be a concern. Then if you are a lawyer in the legal team, you may think, what? Then my boss and my peers will know everything I'm doing. It's like Big Brother is watching you. And then it's creating like unhealthy competition. So that can be a reaction. And then, you know, on the legal technology side, you know, some technology company may think, you know, it will be more difficult for me to push my product because then the client really understands what they need. So that's the type of concerns that we see, and that's fine, that's fair, it's part of life, but it's better to put things on the table, because then we can actually say, no, it's, you know, data will bring you a lot of benefits. And we can move to the next slide. So on the next slide, we are actually, you know, showing to you and sharing with you what we've seen firsthand when we do this type of project. So on the CLO, the CLO, she or he, is very happy. Because one thing we hear when they are sitting on the board of management, so every board member, they have numbers. You know, the marketing person will show, you know, how the marketing campaigns they did and what was the return on investment. The sales person will show what is the top line and how they are driving, you know, increased profitability by not granting too many rebates. But when it comes to the lawyer in the room, what data do you show? Oh yes, I can speak to you about the latest litigation, but that's it. So with having data, you have the P&L of law, and that's great. Then you can shine, you can show the value driven by your team. So, and this is what we've seen. For the legal team, it's great because, you know, as Grégoire was saying, you have this number where people work too much. So here, because you have the data, then you will be able to say no to the business at times, to say, no, this I don't touch, you know, because we agreed on self-business serve. Or I've got already like 20 agreements to manage, and, you know, your agreement will come next week. So you have the data, so you will be able to explain to business people why you need to prioritize your work a certain way. And then for technology, it's great because then you know that you will be able to address the needs of your client and provide them with the solutions they genuinely need. And then, you know, with the partnership we're creating with Grégoire, so we help. Then we make sure that the tool which is made available to you, you know, we can help you on the fine-tuning, on getting the data and fine-tuning the processes. So if we move to the next slide, this is to show you, you know, okay, you have the data, how you can structure the data. And that's, you know, the great product of Legisway, which is to give you an overview of all the data that you have been collecting. And then part of the partnership, so we are building a 5-layer taxonomy, which is very important. And I will just, you know, stress on one point, which is it's not only about data relating to what you do, it's also data relating to the underlying risks and opportunities. And this is about connecting the dots again. This is super important. So let's take the risk. Let's say you have some lawyers responsible to provide legal support to sales organization. And the key risk will be antitrust. So here, the key point is to say, okay, you look at how many trainings on antitrust your legal function is providing, and then you will articulate and quantify the risk. So antitrust in Europe, quite simple. If you have a big issue, it can go up to 10% of your global turnover. And this is one example. Think about GDPR, think about AI, think about ESG. So when we speak to many organizations, you have what we call a compliancization of the law, meaning that if you have an issue, you have some authorities that can go directly after you and issue a big fine against you. So that's why it's so important when you think about data and when you see those beautiful KPIs and charts to include data in the mix and connect it to the activity you know, your team and yourself are doing. If we move to the next slide, yes, go ahead, Grégoire. Yeah.
What you were describing, and it's somehow related to the next slide with the assessment, is that I really love what we're trying to build here in terms of assessment tool, because to the contrary of what we currently see pretty much everywhere when it comes to assessing digital maturity of legal departments, and which is mostly focusing on also what kind of IT stack do you have internally? Are you using shared folders? Are you using, what kind of tools are you using? Are you mostly based on spreadsheets, or do you have something already in place, etc.? We're taking into consideration really the broader scope, which is not just what you have on your computer and how your legal information is structured, but pretty much everything that goes around it. So how is your team structured? How are you working? What's the kind of investment that you're making on these aspects? What's the level of spending that you have? So to have a good correlation between what is the context of your practice of law, what's your organization, what are you doing, what is your industry, what is the size of your organization, and how you work with different departments, and then to consider the tech stack that goes on top of this. But again, it's what you were describing, the 3 Ps, you know, what people, processes, product. and there's a specific order to that.
Yeah, and absolutely. Well, that's, very important, connecting the dot, understanding your tech stack. So in here is just, very high level to explain to you, the maturities that we have been developing together with Gregoire and Rasha, with on the, background supporting this call. It's like some key bullet points. And you can see, so, level 1, you don't have data, it's all over the place. Then level 2, you may have a tech roadmap, some data relating to your budget. You may have already, technology to help you with a budget. And you see the element of risk quantification, which is very important. This is, from our perspective, something, which is again overlooked. But then, when I move to the last stage, level 5, so the dream state is for you to spend time on the high value stuff, so complexity. So think about ESG. You have those 8 new directives coming up your way. So that's what you should be spending time on. When we speak to organization, we see that actually, 80% of their team is busy on like simple routine procurement contract. And they may spend 1 or 2 weeks on ESG because they know it's important, but it comes on top. And that's why they end up working at night and in weekends. But then going back to the example of procurement contract, this is a typical area where you should build a proper playbook. And this is a playbook that then can be leveraged with the technology of Legisway, so that then the person in procurement should be empowered to manage those transactions autonomously and safely. And this is what you can do through the combination of data and technology. So if we move to the next slide, so this is now, to help you, because, Gregoire showed you the numbers around budget. This is one of the pain points you have. So what we try to help you is to build a business case and to say, okay, my dear board of management, if you give me a budget, like you will give a budget when you do a transformation or when you do an M&A, think about an M&A of 2 billion. They will spend 500 million on doing this M&A, between hiring the bank, hiring the lawyers, doing all the negotiations. This is a lot of money. So for the legal function, why should it be different? It's the same. So that's why, you should really try to get a budget, say, okay, give me 500,000, 1 million, and I will give you a return on investment, okay? And I will show that in the next slide. But for now, for me, the key point is, in terms of benefit, is how much time do you and your team spend on low value work? And that should be your KPI number 1. From my perspective, I see this as a mission from a people perspective. I see too many people suffering. There was a study, I'm based in Switzerland, showing that you have 20% burnout in the legal community in-house. 20%. Why? Because of this. And so the responsibility of the legal community is actually to know how many hours you spend on low value work. And you should build a plan, say, okay, if today my team spent 50, 60% on this, I should show that over time they spend less and less time. It's like, it's like ESG, decarbonization. It should be an ESG KPI to help you, so that then you can go to your board of management and ask for budget. So if we go to the next slide, it shows you how you can build the business case. Is to say, if today I spend 40,000 hours through a team that costs me between 100 and 120 euro an hour, which is the hourly rate of in-house. We have some benchmark. If tomorrow I don't spend 120, but I spend 80, 60, or even less if it's business self-serve, you can generate up to 10 million in this example, 10 million euro. And this is how you can convince your board of management. If you give me 500,000, 1 million today, I will give back to this organization the 10 million, notwithstanding the fact that my people will be happier. And, and I will show that a decrease of this rate of burnout. So that's it for this slide, and we can move to the next one.
Right, I wasn't mute. So there is an important thing about this, which is the really the hidden cost of your time. There are a couple of indicators. There are a couple of things that you do for which it's very easy to build really an ROI indicator. For example, spend management, legal spend management. That's very easy to put actually an ROI on it. Actually, how much you spend versus how much you will be spending next year, based on an analysis of what you've been doing with external service providers. But what is much more difficult and a lot more vicious to establish is actually how much of your time have you been dedicating to, and that's what you're describing, Alan, to things that are really low value. Where do you place the needle when it comes to what's the value and on which kind of topics should I be involved? There are the obvious, you shouldn't be involved in, if you're the general counsel, you shouldn't be involved in any kind of discussion related to an NDA on daily business. This is the absolute no-go zone. But you have such a really thick gray area of the things where I'm involved a little bit, but to what extent? Is it just half of my hand or the whole arm here? And that's really also difficult to assess and to place the needle, because I mean everything, and you just get caught in this spinning wheel of firefighting. Everything is urgent. Everything is urgent. I mean, you've been in-house, Alan. I've been practicing law as well. I mean, everything is absolutely urgent when it comes to your internal customer, external. And it's very difficult to just step back, take a moment, and say, okay, this is urgent, but this one is a bit more urgent than the other urgent topic that I have on top of my 4 other urgent topics already on my to-do list. So the difficult thing to position. I don't know, Alan, if you have a good tip for our audience on how.
Yeah, so it's what you already say, Grégoire, which is, technology is only a means to an end. And this is what this slide is about, is start understanding where you stand. Don't lie to yourself. Be honest. Say, okay, this is my level of maturity today. It's nothing bad. It's, good thing is to know where you are. Because once you know where you are, once you know your pain points, you know the pain points of your team, but not only in a regional hub or global hub, but at local level. You also hear and listen to the pain points of your business stakeholders. Then you know where you are. And then you can build, a vision, which is very important. You should have a legal and compliant strategic plan, which is mirroring, the strategic plan of your business. And you say, okay, based on where I am today, this is my ideal end state today. And then how do you go from A to B? And that's very important, because what we see too often is after a few weeks, people are being frustrated. They say, I'm investing time and I don't see an immediate return on investment. So here it's about managing expectation. It's about understanding that, it will be a step-by-step process. It's typically, a 3 to 5 years plan. It's like, transforming the business. It's exactly the same. And then it's making sure that your team understands that there is no magic bullet. It will require a journey, effort, and what is also last message on this slide is like innovation. So it's bearing in mind, okay, I've got the true north, I know where I want to go, but I also know that, I will go right, left on the way. I don't know if you have some sailors in the room, but, the wind is going your way, headwind, and then you need, to pivot, but always going to the same direction. And that's what is important. So here it's, again, going back to mindset and to people.
Yeah, it's also because it's a never-ending cycle. I think there is no point where you can say, hey, I think I'm done with this project. It will constantly evolve. You will push the boundaries of what you want to do. Also because these technologies keep evolving, and what is being available, it keeps evolving. So there is no resting point. There is no really moment where you say, okay, stop. I'll just won't touch this anymore. It's important to have this iterative approach, and like in any good road movie, what matters most is not really where you go. It's actually you make sure that the journey is as enjoyable as possible, so that you get there in a good way. So build the journey, and that's a bit the message here. A couple of numbers that we wanted to share with you here again. Important to understand also the reasons why legal departments resist new technology. Half of them, and that's also very interesting, resisted because of a lack of understanding of knowledge or skills around these technologies. Almost the other half is about organizational issues. For only 6% of them, it's about financial. So it is really important to understand that really the core situation here is more about understanding what it does, how does it fit in an organization, and how can we make this happen to then build on the business case. So you need to figure out first, how do you want to work? What's your target organization would look like? It is really an important aspect of it. Also interesting to consider a couple of technology challenges here. So this is an extract from a much more recent survey that we conducted called the Legisway benchmark, where we were trying to assess really for in-house departments across Europe. How does that look like, and what are your main challenges when deploying legal technology? And securing budget is one of these difficulties in the introduction. So not the resistance part of it, which is actually more the internal aspect, but internal challenging, so convincing, gaining stakeholders, user buy-in. The change management here is also very interesting. Coping with a higher workload and increasing headcount, increased need for training, collaboration with IT department, reorganization and redefinition of processes, and resistance to change within the legal department. But there are so many different factors that come on top. Now,
maybe Grégoire, if I may, one point, because we sit every week with Grégoire. If you think you can do transformation by giving an additional project or activity to your existing team, that's one of the biggest mistakes, guys. What you need to do again is secure proper resources. This requires expertise and this requires time. So, please don't say, I've got a team of 50 people and I'm gonna give this additional thing on top of everything else. This is the perfect recipe for failure.
Very true, Alan. Indeed. The other part is process improvement. So this slide is a bit hard to read. So we have different colors based on whether it's already improved. Dark blue on the left side, green, which is planning to improve. Red, improvements needed but not planned yet, and light blue, which is no plans to improve at all. What is interesting to emphasize here is that we have a couple of things on which organizations are already working, and really the top topics are structuring processes, managing workload, high volume of requests, and collecting, organizing, and retrieving legal information. This is 48%. This is really the most strategic topic on which organizations are working right now. So pretty much related to what we were explaining with Alan. Interesting also to emphasize that somehow still a significant part of organizations don't have, even though they identify it as an area of improvement, they don't have anything planned yet, or they don't plan anything in relation to this for processes and workload and the high volume of requests. That's a bit concerning, I must say, in some ways, as it's very difficult to plan and to try to collect and organize your data if you don't want to put the right processes in place to make sure it works well in your organization. I don't know how you feel about that, Alan.
Yeah, I mean, no, it really resonates with what we have been discussing. So process is a great one, and this interrelationship with the business, and the other one, demonstrating the value of the legal department. You can do it if you have data, and having complete visibility over legal activities. I mean, that's probably where I see the biggest gap today.
Indeed. If we look and to talk just a little bit about AI, because that's also the elephant in the room. It's been around for a long time. AI has been around for a long time. We tend to forget about that. So sometimes when we read articles about actually the impact of AI, it just feels like like we've just discovered actually the benefits of AI. Just came around a year ago with ChatGPT, but it's been so much more for a very long time. We've asked in our surveys the impact of what we call transformational technologies, and this has been something very significant for organizations, and numbers just keep growing. Here, what we emphasize is how much legal departments and legal professionals identify these transformational technologies as really impactful technology, impactful trends for the next few years. Numbers keep growing at a really significant pace from year to year. It's a survey, Future Legal Year is a survey we've been conducting for the past 5 years now. And look, between 2021 and 2022 numbers, we had a 10-point increase for artificial intelligence, and this was even before generative AI. So it gives you a vague idea of actually how significant these numbers are. But what is also interesting is really the level of understanding that we have behind it. It was already challenging before Gen AI to understand what was the extent and the impact that these technologies could have. But now with Gen AI, it's even hard to just keep pace with the new findings and the breakthroughs that we have. Gen AI came out really in November last year. We're about to celebrate just 1 year of Gen AI, and we've already had 3 major versions of OpenAI's GPT version. So it is very significant. So the main question we should ask, and that's again back to what we were discussing with Alan, is a bit, how do we position technology between what you are doing and what these technologies can do? One way of positioning this is between when we talk about value and value of the work, from low value to high value. A very simple way of putting it is, so how complex and how much scales does a task require? And if we look at obviously the most autonomous judgment and the specific technical complexity of task, we see this is very much the human area where we have the deepest expertise as humans. A lot of autonomous, almost emotions, the highly strategic and significant amount of thinking required. On the other side, something which is very basic, standard, binary, requiring very transactional skills. This is really the predominance of automation. This is really where we want to just have something very basic in place to make sure that we have, for example, we have a template with actually blanks. We just want actually to have a document which is being filled out based on information provided from a database. And that's something very easy to do. Artificial intelligence, the initial artificial intelligence was getting much closer to this judgment based on knowledge. Actually have enough capacity to understand, to analyze, to extract information in documents, in your data sets, to make sure that you have insightful information coming from it. Generative AI, the interesting part of it is this overlap that we have with a part of what we were initially doing, and that we were not foreseeing as something that could be either replaceable or where we would expect some more support in here. And that's also why it is so interesting to understand what are the main use cases that we have with this overlap on a couple of tasks that usually we've been doing. But again, the most extreme part where we have the lowest value of the work. And here we get the most of the assistance that we can get out of these tools. It's very early on yet, and we're seeing some use cases getting out in many different products, and we are releasing our own use cases around them. But it's interesting to assess based on actually how standardized and how bespoke the tasks are, and how expensive or costly is the labor. So there are many different things here, from pretty much human to automation, where you can consider from corporate governance to really highly customized M&A operations and IP and commercial contracts, from NDA at the very bottom, where we need a tech vendor, from document management. So it's a bit to map a bit here what are the main use cases here where AI start becoming a lot more efficient. We obviously recommend to have a lot of caution when it comes to deploying these tools to assess. There's a lot of yet lack of transparency on actually how these tools are being used, how they're being trained, how they're being operated. So we highly recommend that you don't throw yourself, especially for a first project, to that kind of technology immediately, but that actually you assess again. You need to go through the whole process that we've been describing with Alan. I believe that's also why we were so keen in releasing this assessment tool, which is not just based on what kind of IT stack you have, but how is your data structure, how is your organization working, how is your legal function working, to make sure that you're making enlightened decisions on how to and where to take your organization. A couple of final thoughts, because it's already have just a few minutes before being in the hour, but I think that part of the key messages that we had for you today is transformation goes really beyond just law plus technology. It goes really way beyond that. It's understanding how your people, your processes, your legal function is being perceived and is going to work as a significant gear in your organization, and how to position it. So to position yourself as a value driver in the organization, because this is what legal function is more than ever. Technology, again, as means, not as an end. And please do your homework. Structured data is key. You need to start with data. I don't know if you want to add something, Alan, on top of this.
I mean, I think hopefully it was helpful for the audience. What we have been discussing, and I will go back to the first point I made around mindset. You are lawyers, you can drive a lot of value, be proud, and big picture, and connect the dots. Pleasure to speak to everyone today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Alan. Thank you everyone. I don't know if we have any other questions. I've seen a couple. We've tried to answer in writing in the chat. Please do get in touch with both of us. More than happy, either email, on LinkedIn, anywhere. So again, thank you very much for your participation this morning, and Alan, always a great pleasure to discuss with you.
Likewise. Take care, everyone.